There we are. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Edgerunners HQ and our Cyberpunk RED talk show, Night City Sofa. I am Jessica here alongside Games End.
Oh, hi, Jess. How's it going?
It goes. How are you?
Not bad.
During tonight's episode of Night City Sofa, we are continuing our look into Night City 2045 as we take a deeper look at Northside. We are pleased to welcome back Jay Gray, Cyberpunk RED line manager and writer of the NorCal military base.
I am both those things.
Yes, you also wrote the Outskirts, so if you have questions for the Outskirts, ask, but we're doing our deep dive into the Outskirts next month.
Yeah, later. It'll take us
Eventually. Yeah, you can't say I didn't give you plenty of show material.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I could have done one district every week and still not gotten through the book.
Yeah, we were talking about that. We're like, we'd still be doing this next year if we went as in-depth as we do on some things.
Technically speaking, that would be something around 26 shows. If you did 27, 28, if you did like one chapter, one section a show. So that's not too bad.
Like half a year.
Only half a year.
Plus, but plus all the monthly DLCs, that's another 12. So
that's true.
That almost fills the whole year. Yeah, for those who might not know who you are, Jay, in this day and age, I don't know how that's possible, but can you tell us a bit about yourself and the wizardry you create?
So Wizardry was a great game series from back in the day, but I did not create it. I appreciate the thought. I'm not quite that old. No, my name is Jay Gray. I am. If you get that joke, you are also old. I am the line manager for Cyberpunk RED. I was the project manager on Night City 2045, as well as a writer, layout artist, and an editor on it. I make Cyberpunk go for our Talsorian Games under the purview of the boss and chief bottle washer, Michael Pondsmith.
And you do such a great job.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know if you've heard, but I've complained that you're too good at your job. Because when I tried to find the quotes for my trivia, the latest DLCs and the supplement, you've done the layout so on point that there is no filler room for quotes that I can't see. I'm like, oh, what's a good quote from one of the newer DLCs? And I'll go through the past three and be like, there isn't one.
That's a coincidence. It's just the way that the DLCs with the Night City 2045 is to have quotes. So that specifically was not supposed to. I mean, not in the big quote blocks that you'll see in the quotable book. But you'll see them again where there is. It's just the last couple of DLCs, they just worked out that way. I don't know that that's because I'm a better layout artist than I was 5 years ago. I am, because practice makes you a better person, better at your work. But it's just kind of the way it worked out. I think part of it is that we've gotten used to writing almost unconsciously to our word count. We kind of have an idea of the same way that my youngest is learning how to drive, and I'm trying to tell her, okay, I had to stop and think, how do you make a left turn? Because I just make a left turn.
Right.
Yep.
But it's the same kind of thing. After a while, you forget all the individual things that you at one time learned. You turn the wheel, and when it's about halfway through the turn, you let it start moving back. And when you're making a curve, the top of the wheel should be aligned with the all those things that you learned and checking your mirror and looking back and forth. All those things you learned, you now do subconsciously at work. We've gotten to the point where we're kind of writing on that level too, where we just kind of know, okay, I know to do about this much.
Yep. It's incredible.
Fair enough. Yeah.
For those of you who are here joining us on the live stream, just before we get into all of the questions that we have for Jay, if you have any questions, please do post them in chat. We'll ask them where it's relatively appropriate, so if we don't get to it right away, it's probably because I have a question that relates somewhere down the line. And with that, I think, other than telling you that you're really awesome at your job and
thank you.
Your layout is so much, and thank you for all your many hours. You guys aren't aware the PDF is so beautifully hyperlinked. Yes. Where you can click a location on the map and it will bring you to that location down in whatever area it's in, and then you can jump back up. Thank you for all your hard work hyperlinking. I know it's not difficult, but it's like busy, repetitive work that requires a lot of double checking.
It is super repetitive, and there probably is some way to automate the process more than what I'm doing. But the way I do it makes sure ensures that it's actually done, and that because it's easier checking hundreds upon hundreds of hyperlinks. Quality checking them is a pain, so it's better to just make sure they're done right the first time.
It's true.
Okay, so before we get into, I guess, too much of like like the book, I had two questions from the community that kind of tie into 2077. So I figured I would ask those first.
Okay, hit me with it.
So Allie wants to know. They found Cyberpunk RED after playing 2077, like many new players did. They're sure. Is there a faction equivalent to the Mox in Night City 2045?
There are factions that do sex work. There are factions that protect their community, whatever their community happens to be. The Mox are a relatively unique gang, and so no, not really in that sense. Just like there's no real Valentinos equivalent there before 2045 either, because we've never had a specifically Latino gang before, as an example, or one heavily influenced by Latino and Chicano culture, or for that matter, the Voodoo Boys, who never really have one that's properly Haitian in that sense. So no, the Mox are a relatively unique gang. If you wanted a gang which has both sex work and protects people, you might look at the Sweet Queens. They are a very cool gang, very queer-based. They do sex work and they protect their community, but not in the kind of the level of the Mox, where the Mox control the entire sex industry.
And from Chris, they're wondering if you could talk about some of the locations or facts or anything that's in the book, or give some hints to what's in here that are precursors maybe to what's seen in 2077. Because we've talked about Red being a bridge, right?
Right. So there's plenty. First of all, you'll find a lot in the outskirts. You'll find, for example, Jackson Plains Airport, which is fully operational in 2045, and a ghost airport in 2077. There's a motel out there. There is a mine and a factory out in the outskirts, all in 2077. There is a paint factory in Santo Domingo, which is not a paint factory, but is present in 2077. There is obviously mega building. Every mega building that's mentioned in 2045 is in 2077, H10, H11, H4 being the most important of the sets, or the most visited of the sets. So yeah, there are quite a few little things here and there. There are characters you will find in Night City 2045 that were first debuted on our timeline as opposed to the world's timeline in 2077, like Padre and like Dino Danovic, and a pair of siblings who happen to be assassins or enforcers, depending on your point of view, and a Ripper Doc in Santo Domingo. There are all there. There are hints as to how the Valentinos of 2077 begin to be formed in 2045. You'll see that if you read between the lines while you are reading the book. There is hints that why downtown is a much larger section of the island in 2077 than it is in 2045. There's a lot of small between the line things that are there, and not so between the line things that are very obviously there. You will, if you go see 6th Street in 2077 and engage in a shooting contest, you're doing that in the old Aldo camp. Or parts of it thereof. There is an entire town you can visit in 2045 that is underwater in 2077. So there's a lot of that. We did a lot of work with CDPR on saying, hey, here's our list of everything we think that is there in 2077, that is there in 2045, and here's how we think it should be included both people, places, thing, and plot points. And then they said, okay, cool. Here's our ideas on that, and ideas were meshed, and that's how we came up with it. So it is a bridge. The same thing, by the way, is true in reverse. There's a lot of 2020 material in 2045. A lot of characters, relatively minor characters in some cases, who were in 2020 who show up in the 2045 source books. Locations that were in 2020 that show up in 2045 change or not. For example, Flower Town in the Upper Marina in 2020 Night City, the 2020 Night City source book, was actually a florist, and in 2045 it is a homeless encampment. So there is evolution going from 2020 to 2045 to 2077 with enough cool new stuff to make 2045 not feel like it's just all callbacks and call forwards.
Awesome.
Games, I feel like you had a question that kind of complements that. No? Okay.
No, I'm not sure what question you...
It's fine. Your question about writers and what...
Oh yeah, if we're moving past the 2070...
Those are the two questions I had. You're good.
Okay. I wanted to say, like, you worked with a lot of really interesting creatives on this, and this was a big team. How much of, like, the roadmap did you have in your head beforehand, and how much of it was, like, them bringing really interesting ideas to you, and then you, like, approving or going, like, maybe not?
So, the interesting thing about Cyberpunk, of course, is that it is a collaborative existing world, like Star Trek or Marvel Comics or Smurfs. Very random there. But the end result being is that, of course, there was a lot of pre-existing material and a lot of things that need to exist one way or the other. So when I set this up, I created a core document. The core document contained literally every piece of information we had written about Night City in the year 2045 from Cyberpunk RED, from every DLC, every source book, the data pack. That was all in there, divided, and then additional information was included. Like by the time the writers were brought on board, there was a decently rough outline of the facts chapter. Where I didn't have it all written, but the bullet points which explained it were all there. We knew, how the justice system worked. We knew how citizenship worked, that sort of thing. So when they came in, I gave them this document. I said, here you go. And then there was, a list of other locations. I said, I need these things. There needs to be a water treatment plant. There needs to be, buildings that contain. We call them container buildings. They are buildings that contain other things like office buildings or markets. There needs to be this list of things. So, there needs to be consulates because the rest of the world exists. So grab those things and start writing. So the end result being is that every writer came in with a fairly strong skeleton upon which to hang, and then they created, in some cases, as little as 50% because a lot of the locations already existed. But in most cases, I'd say around 75% of each district in terms of they got to decide on the voice. They got to work on who the city manager is for the most part. They got to kind of, work with some existing lore events and create new lore events. We determined for the most part in advance who the security providers were, but they were able to put some in some cases and write about how they worked. And then the big juicy meaty part, they got to make up most of the locations.
Nice. I really like that it's told like a travel log, so you have the different medias that are doing each of those. Going into, is that narratively how you thought it would work out, or is that a later?
No, that was the brief. So there are two ways to write a book like this. One is you tell everybody, here's your voice, write this way. And in that case, you want to have as few writers as possible because that requires, you get a few writers who can write that voice, and it requires less editing in the back end to hammer it all into shape. And that is kind of the travelogue you have in Night City 2020. the original source book. It is one travelogue that feels like it was written by at least one overarching the location parts, as opposed to the beginning chapter parts that tell about the world. Or you have multiple authorial voices, which is what we always intended to do. We took a lot of cues from Danger Gal Dossier, where each chapter was written by a different analyst. And in this case, we said, okay, we're going to give you each a media, you get each your voice, and that way every district feels like it's being told from the point of view of someone who knows it, as opposed to the point of view of a travel writer who happens to be writing about it. And not only was that, I think, better for the style of the book, but it was also a heck of a lot easier on the editing end. I joke, though, it would have added a half a year to the production time if I had to work on rewriting to make sure the voice all stays consistently the same throughout 311 pages. But the truth is it would have taken longer, and it would not, in my opinion, have been as interesting, because each district would have felt less unique and individual.
Fair enough. In Jolly talked about, when we spoke to them last week, about how the district we were discussing was good for like low stakes style stories. Did you one of your guidance to the other authors, was it like, hey, think of what type of stories you would tell in these districts, or did that just naturally evolve?
The writers we got are all pros, and they are all people who have either written for the industry long enough or played enough games to know that okay, sorry, somebody fell upstairs. They're fine. The purpose of a book like this is to have every location be something you can hang a story on, and if not every location, then most locations. And so I didn't need to tell them that, they already know. We had people from like Eddie Webb and Chris Spivey and Steve Kinson, who have amazingly tons more experience than I do in things in the industry. They've been doing it longer. Steve Kinson has written. I make this joke with Steve Kinson. I made a list of like the books I really love from the point of view of like lore. Like, they just gave me the big fat meaty chunks of lore for games, and I discovered that Steve wrote like half of them. So he knew, and Eddie knew, because Eddie worked on Vampire, and World Darkness is just designed that way. And the others, Fran and Mike McDonald, for example, both came up, playing 2020 or working in 2020. And they just knew that's just the way it is. So I didn't have to tell them. They knew that each district was a trip, but each district was also a series of plot hooks, and they just took to that like a fish out of water. Fish in water. A fish in water, possibly a fish in a barrel that contains water.
Fair enough. Jess, did you have a question you wanted to ask?
I have so many questions for Jess.
Ask me all the questions.
Although I will say, I really appreciated that it was written in world by medias that are there, because it is a resource that players can look up at any point in time. It is universal knowledge on both sides of the table, and that was huge for me.
That was important.
Yep. And more medias in the world is never a bad thing. I may be slightly biased there, but more medias in the world is never a bad thing. Okay, so as a general, before we get into NorCal, the security and utility codes, was that you?
Yes.
Was that you and James? Was that?
It was 10% me and 90% James. I gave James a brief. I said, I need so Night City 2020, amazing book, literally a classic, the best book in the entire line, 2020 line, had relatively complex security codes, which consisted of letters and numbers, and gave you a lot of information, but only if you knew the code or had the cheat sheet in front of you. And I said to him, we need something. I told James, we need something that's super simple, but meaty. Something that will, that you don't have to, security code, blah, 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 blah. Let's me go to the front of the book to decode that with my magic decoding ring. So James came up with the idea. We worked together. We came up with the idea of roll under, because that's a nice, simple system. And then it was just James was like, okay, I'll take that, and he was like, okay, we'll do light, medium, hard, and then add hard into it, and then we'll have. And so the rules all fit on one page, and they're really easy to remember. And light is a standard combat encounter minus a few guys. Medium is a standard combat encounter, and hard is whatever the heck you want it to be. And it's a good balance between having a strong presence that gives good guidance and having a really complex thing, which takes where the GM says, okay, time out 5 minutes while I figure out what exactly happens, because not only do I have to figure out the cops, but there's specific information on all the defenses as well. I need to know what these numbers and these letters mean. I'm bad at keeping that information in my head. Secret codes, I cannot solve a cipher to save my life without a book telling me explain the cipher right in front of me. And I know a lot of people just don't contain that information well inside their head.
I remember going cross-eyed looking at those in the 2020 book. So I know what you're talking about.
They were great, but they didn't need to be quite. In this way, honestly, it also gives the GM a lot more space, I think, to respond as makes sense for this. It fits their story, and that's really important.
Well, and intentionally or unintentionally, it kind of gives you a good stick to where if your players are planning on doing something somewhere where there's, a high security level, you can be like, so you would know local area that this is a bad idea. The response time is quick and heavy.
That was absolutely that was the full intention, is give the GMs the stick if they want it. They don't need it, but whether you need it to make things more complicated or move the plot, it's like, oh, guys, sirens.
Yeah.
Or you just, or you don't need it, and you're just like, oh, well, this story is going great, and adding the cops would just make it terrible. It would bog it down, and it would add nothing. So I'm going to pretend the cops just weren't called today. I rolled an 8 on a security code of 7, so no cops today. It's up to you, but by doing it this way, we make it the GM's tool and not a over steady rule. It's a guideline.
Yeah.
And was it always the goal to have the different locations have possibly different security codes, or was that something that kind of just came up in conversation, where it was like, maybe a location was tossed around, you're like, oh, this should have a different security code. Should we do that? It was
always the intent that at least some locations had different security codes, because as we were going through, we were realizing, well, just because it's an NCPD territory, it doesn't mean NCPD is watching it, and some locations. Well, then once we started giving them, we realized that the locations with different security codes were enough that it made sense to give every location a security code, even if that location's security code is exactly the same as the district it's in. It just worked out that way.
Also, for those of you who have the digital copy, print out the page that has the beautiful table of security codes. Highly recommend you add that to your GM screen. Just use a little binder clip.
That was a last-minute addition. Originally, it was just a picture of the city.
Oh, thank you for adding the table. That's fantastic.
Yeah, taken from another thing, and I was like, oh well, I got the space. I bet I could fit all the security codes in there. And guess what? I did. So that was much more useful.
Yeah, very, very handy.
Yeah, I know you're not going to reprint the GM screen, but if you do, that's not a bad one to have on there.
It's not.
The GM screen has all the information that can fit on the GM screen. We worked really hard.
Okay, so add a fifth panel.
You laugh, but Kenzer and Company for a long time back made a really great GM screen for Hackmaster with flippable. It had 8 panels, because every panel had a panel that they could flip over, and on one side, if you flipped it on the GM side, it had GM information. If you flipped it around, so on the other side, it had player information. And so, in theory, it's possible, but the amount of work that must have given into getting that panel printed somewhere boggles my mind. One day, I'm gonna march over to their booth at Gen Con and ask them how they did it. And they're gonna say, There's a reason we never did it again.
All right. Games, if any questions before we move on to NorCal specifically?
No, those were all the general questions I had.
Okay. I'll start with an easy one. Did Thompson name himself after the gun? I assume Thompson's not his real name. Our media personality in NorCal.
So Thompson is a character. Thompson originally was a character in the very first Cyberpunk game. Thompson is the media who pulls Johnny out of an alley after he's beaten the crap out of by a couple of guys who kidnap Alt Cunningham. Thompson was very specifically that media. After 2020, Thompson became a name that medias use when they want to publish a particularly hot story and they don't want their name attached to it.
Right.
It is the media equivalent of anonymous. So whether that original character was named after the machine gun or because someone decided it was a very noir detective sounding name, I do not know. That's actually never a question I've never asked Mike, as how Thompson got his name, because it fits him so well. I didn't even think there would be a reason for it.
It just is. Just like turning left, you just do.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's just one. And then I've had many conversations with Mike about many things and many questions I've asked him about the original Cyberpunk, but that is not one.
Interesting. All right. Did you find it difficult at all coming up with abbreviations? Because I know we have there's a lot of information out there, but was it difficult at all coming up with the abbreviations and the names for the military, that were going to be used on the military base? Because you have things like COG and CTCs and POLCs. Was that
No, because 99% of that is already pre-existing. So a COG was first defined. And I believe Home of the Brave 2020 supplement, which is the idea of a combined operational group, which combines multiple units from the various U.S. militaries into a single operational group. That was first mentioned there, and that carries over into the modern day. All the various squadrons and units that are on the NorCal military base are what they, except for with the exception of the engineering unit. They are the units that were mentioned in 2020 specifically. They carry over. A lot of the terminology exists, like the cellular one, but the post exchange, aka PX, is what the grocery store on a military base is called, at least in the United States. So in general, it was not a case of making things up. It was just a case of using the stuff and remembering that I had to define every time I use an abbreviation, I had to define it somewhere so people knew what the heck I was talking about.
I have some friends who are military, and they say stuff that I'm like, I have no clue what you're talking about.
In English, please.
It is a different world, just like everything else, every other group. It's like if you ever listen to I do remember one time listening to two guys who were working on my water heater. And they were speaking English, and but it was just weird pipes and tools and PSIs and pressures and stuff, and it's a whole different language.
My mother's a nurse,
depending on which
so I got a lot of medical jargon growing up, and she'd be like, blah, da, 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 da. And I'm like, in English, mother, not in medical, in English.
And it becomes important too, because for example, in a hospital, they need to not only speak accurately, they need to speak quickly, and convey a lot of information, as much information as possible in as few syllables as possible, because every syllable is a second they can be doing something else to save someone's life.
100%.
Yep.
So the Task Force 384, which is the naval section, how far out do they roam in the water, and what is their relationship with the Thelus? And I was supposed to look this up. I didn't. The Russian mob boats.
Right. The Very.
That's it.
So the majority of the. Let me get the exact term because I've forgotten it. 1 second. Let me get a copy out and look it up. Don't mind me. I'm doing things. I want to get this term correctly because this is a very important term. This is a term I learned as I was working on this book, as a matter of fact. I knew the concept. I just didn't know the exact words. Local authority, self-replicating mines, post-exchange docks. The majority of the fleet are focused on coastal operations, utilizing fighter subs like the Mari class. They have littoral combat ships, which basically means by the shore. So the majority of the work they do, the task force does, is by the shore, and so they stay fairly close to the shoreline, up and down the coast. They are effectively doing kind of Coast Guard-y duties. Some of the ships do go further out into the water. None of them leave, for the most part, leave what we would call U.S. coastal territories. So none of them are crossing the ocean, for example. I'm not going to give exact directions and distances, but yeah, for the most part, most of them say the majority of their work is done closer to the shore. Their relationship with the Thelos is that they try to stay out of the Thelos way, and the Thelos try to stay out of their way, but there is some necessary coordination that needs to be done just to make sure that traffic flows correctly.
But it's like a mutual kind of understanding of you stay in your lane, we'll stay in ours, and we're good.
I mean, in the exact same way that, say, the New York naval docks, the Navy there works with civil authorities. The Thelos are effectively the civil port authority in Night City, and so they work with them in the same way that they do, or the same way in theory that a military base near an airport will work with air traffic control at that airport to make sure that their flights don't intersect with each other.
Slightly important.
Ideally, yeah.
Ideally.
And what about the Viri?
No, they don't have anything to do with the Viri. Other than it's civilian traffic, and therefore that, in theory, there might be raids occasionally, possibly, if they feel that they have intelligence that a foreign ship contains materials, weapons, and other things that are detrimental to NorCal's continued survival and operation. But for the most part, that's all civilian traffic, and they don't do anything with civilian traffic.
Okay.
Which is how it stays a free port, but still has a naval military base right there.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
I worded this question poorly, and I apologize. I'm gonna do my best.
Ask the question, we'll muddle through it.
With the added section that you guys put, like children growing up on the base, which is a very common thing. But would you edit the original life path in the your environment section to include NorCal military base, or would you lump it in with one of the pre-existing things? Is like, if they grew up in a safer zone, it could be the base.
I would not edit the life path to include it because it's a relatively small percentage of the population. But I would say that it is absolutely fair to take, say, you grew up in a corporate environment or you grew up in a safe environment, and to reskin it and say, I grew up on the military base. I think that is a fair interpretation, as I grew up in a corporate tower, or I grew up in a really nice part of town. I think that's just fine.
Because before I read that section, it didn't even dawn on me that you could have grown up as an army brat, as a base brat.
A military brat.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You could have.
So I thought that was just this entire section just tickled my brain with so many ideas as both player side and GM side, and I was like, oh, you could do this, and oh, you could do this, and oh, I hadn't considered that.
That's good. That means I did my job right.
Absolutely fantastic. I have it mentioned much later on, so I will attempt to continue my questions first.
Okay.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but security and utility codes, when you roll them, the dice do not explode.
No, they do not.
Okay, that's what I thought. So many places at the NorCal military base have a security code of 11, which essentially means if you start shit will come at you.
Yeah. So okay.
I love that.
When I was writing it, I had it. Yeah, it's great. I had it in mind. There is a level of the Hitman World of Assassination trilogy, which I highly recommend if you are into cool video games, called Colorado. No one likes Colorado. Colorado is the least liked level of all the levels of all the game, and that is because everybody in Colorado is an enforcer and is armed because it's a militia base. And so that is in my brain. Part of it is that the NorCal military base is probably the most, with the exception of a few places, the most secure district because it's a military base. Of course it's secure. They're going out of the way. They have millions of dollars of equipment and weapons, and everybody there is armed. Everybody there is armed. Everybody is
trained.
And trained.
Yeah.
So of course it is. And then, it's the most disciplined area. It's the place with the most control over it. It's the only place with the exception of the executive zone, is the only place with walls, the only district with walls and gates and checkpoints and tanks. So yes, it had to be an 11. Now that doesn't mean you can't get away with things on the North Carolina base. It's just that either you have to be really good at being loud or you've got to be really good at being quiet.
That tracks.
Because that the GM in theory is only rolling those dice if you mess up, and then it's a race to see if you can get off the base.
Have an escape plan in mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of gates and walls, I didn't put this in my document, and I meant to. I believe it was Seeing Double DLC.
Mm-hmm.
God, I could be wrong. Had the Militech advertisement about bring your kid to work day as well as Scott Veterans Day and Militech's surplus sale all in one.
Yes.
I love that ad so much because it's just chaos in a bottle. But as a Militech surplus sale and with the gates and the checkpoints and I mean even just reading what was in Night City 2045, it's like you were escorted everywhere. Like this is here, this is there. Right. What would that be like for a crew to be like, or just a random player going, I'm going to go to the surplus sale at the military base?
So, I believe if you read both the headquarters and the living center for Militech, it says that they have their own gates, separate from the base's gates, and then there are gates beyond those buildings that lead onto things. So you even getting into so in my brain. The surplus sales in the parking lot of the Militech office center. And then, for that day, they have more lax security. They have not lax security in terms of people. There are probably snipers on the roof and plenty of guards walking around with assault rifles, but they are lax about letting people in through the gate in the same way that, say, the local military base near where I grew up was relatively lax in letting people through the gate on the 4th of July when they would hold a concert in the parade grounds. It's just easier on that day. So that is a great time to try to get into Militech's offices or try to sneak beyond Militech into the military base itself, is to wait until Militech holds its, however often the GM decides it is, surplus sale, where it sells off stuff in the parking lot, essentially creating the Militech fixer creates their own night market, Militech specific night market in the parking lot of the Militech's complex.
Okay. I like that the USO hall is pretty much the soft point of the base.
Yes.
But even that is a 7.
Yeah. That's a place where they're less likely to respond because it's kind of place where you'd have brawls, and sometimes soldiers brawl, and you just let them brawl as long as they will trust that whatever someone will keep it from getting too rambunctious. There
makes sense.
Also, it's a lot of kids at the USO. They're relatively young enlistees and such, and as a result, plus all the officers are next door, so they trust that something's going to happen. They'll do something about it.
Yeah.
Just I guess as a side note, I love that there's a couple buildings. I know there's 2. I wrote the academy is one of them. I can't remember the other one. Actually sinks underground for security.
The command headquarters, the Pontilla. Yes, they do. Because shortly before writing this, my youngest went through watching Neon Genesis Evangelion, and I was like, "That's really cool." Because in that particular anime, the entire city sinks beneath the ground. I was like, "I want to do that." It's not practical. It's silly, but it's really neat, and I want to do it because that is that's cool, but also it means that's the ground below facilities, the cavities in which the military base is no longer there, 27, but those cavities may be, and that may be a plot point that a 27 GM might want to explore.
100%.
But it was also just more like, how can I cyberpunk up some bomb shelters? And the local school is always a bomb shelter, right? So.
Yep. Now the CTF, the COG treatment facility. Shockingly,
yes, which.
Sorry.
Treatment facility is a relatively common term for hospitals on military bases.
Shockingly seems to care about cyberpsychosis and will actually remove cyberware if deemed necessary. Which
cyberpsychosis is detrimental to unit cohesion and military discipline.
Why, in the future where many corporations they don't use robots because people are cheaper?
Yep.
Just given the setting, it was kind of a refreshing change of pace to be like, no, we've put time and training and effort. We're not just going to write this person off and send them on a suicide mission or something and train somebody else. So they're like, no, this is a problem. We're going to fix it.
Well, first of all, anyone who has spent any time, I think, looking at military operations will tell you that a well-trained soldier is much better than, if you have a choice, if you were given a choice between a well-trained, smaller military force and a bunch of draftees who only get a couple of weeks, if you have the option, you will pick the first. If you're in a large-scale war and you're running out of resources, you don't, and that's why we have drafts. So that's part of it. They've invested a lifetime, in some cases, literally a lifetime worth of training into these soldiers and airmen and sailors, and they want to ensure that they can get every possible work hour squeezed out of them, every bit of that training is returned. But also, someone going cyber on the base, that's not good for morale. But also, it's a very subtle statement that when you join the military is in the United States is the bit of an ironic thing, because you join to defend rights you give up. When you join the military, you give up a lot of your rights for the duration of the time you were in the military, and you are defending rights which you no longer technically have. And I wanted to point out, now granted, this is Night City and you don't have those rights to begin with. The people they're defending don't necessarily have those rights. I wanted to point out that when you're in the military, you no longer have control over whether you put so much chrome in you that you go cyber psycho. That is beyond your control. The military will decide that for you.
I like it.
I hadn't considered that side. That's legit.
Yep.
This seems like
Now that doesn't mean that during combat they will not pump you so full of combat drugs like black lace that you will go cyber psycho on the field. But that's it's a bizarre kind of thing where sometimes military discipline in a war zone is much different than military discipline in a civilian population setting.
Yeah.
100%.
Okay, Biotechnica Tech Grass. This was the coolest thing. I'm like, you can just change color at a whim. How much would like a 2 by 2 meter, like 1 square amount of tech grass cost?
So we've never put prices on that. It's relatively expensive. Tech grass is basically tech hair but grass.
Yeah.
And I would say that actually, 1 square is about the same cost as 1 application of tech hair on a person.
Okay.
I think that's about fair. And that, by the way, tech grass was invented in and made in Night City. That is the Night City Biotechnica division's specialization is essentially lawn products.
Good to know.
Okay.
It's mentioned in the Biotechnica write-up in the University District. Tech grass and real grass and a few other things like that. Solar ivy, for example, which are basically solar cells that look like ivy.
Yes, remembering those. I just had the horrible idea of like, well, if you don't have enough money to buy tech grass, you could always attempt to steal it from Biotechnica. Horrible
That would
idea.
be funny. Now go over to Charter Hill and start pulling it off people's lawns.
Writes down gig idea.
That would be a great gig idea, honestly. That would be fantastic.
But just cutting them out in perfect like 2 meter by 2 meter squares from various lawns, so it's just like you're also screwing up their lawn like in a weird way.
Right.
When you find out they've wired
this grass.
They've wired the lawn in serial instead of parallel, so that the entire lawn goes dim because you pull out one square.
Yes, perfect. Oh. Are there any secrets or Easter eggs? I feel like this is a games question. I'm sorry, but I'm at the end of my list.
No, you're good.
That you added to I'll say just the NorCal military base that has not been commented on or noticed by the community.
Gosh. Okay, let me look through real quick to remind myself, if you don't mind.
Not at all.
Well, even just the sinking buildings is such.
The sinking buildings
reference.
was like I said, it was a neon Evangelion reference. A lot of them come from my memories of growing up near Fort Devens and visiting the base for various reasons. So there's that. Names have nothing specifically to do with the characters they're named after, but sometimes like Walt Henshaw. Henshaw is the name of a character of the Cyborg Superman from DC Comics. Character has nothing to do with that. It's just I was casting about for names when I named them, and that happened to come to mind. All the names of the ships in the task force come from places. I encourage you to look them up and see kind of where they come from. They are. I try to keep in mind how ships are named in the real world, and get to that. Let's see. There's not honestly a whole lot here because it's such a functional place. But and all the I think pretty much every vehicle comes from 2020 that's mentioned in here. Oh, and the 120th.8th Engineering Battalion is named that because the base is at the 120.8 latitude, or possibly longitude. My brain is not remembering which one goes which direction. But it's a geek joke named after its global position.
That's awesome.
That's really cool. I love that. Those were the questions I had for the base. No, that's not. Well, mostly. Well, I know I'm like, I thought it was, then I looked and I'm like, oh no, Jess, you still have questions. But when we were talking to Jolly, he mentioned that you added the day market in the reclamation zone.
Yes, I did. I had some space and I decided that if I wanted to do a subway-based mall-ish mall, similar to what you see some in some American cities, but you'll see them in Japan. And so I very specifically, as I mentioned during that, I basically went around Shibuya Station Mall in Persona 5, and I wrote down the stores, and then I figured out what their Cyberpunk equivalents would be and put it in. And it made sense to me that if there was any station that would have that kind of location, it would be what is essentially the hub station, because the N-Cart train yards are right there. So I put that in there, and that is true. Here and there are a couple different places throughout the book that I wrote independent of the writers, because I needed to put something in, or I just thought like last minute, oh, this needs to be a place. I wrote Munch in downtown because I realized there was not a furry specific bar, an exotic specific bar or hangout in the city, and I realized I needed one, and I happened to have a little space there, so I put it in. And so that happened in a couple of locations.
Which was going to be my next question, was what other little locations did you write throughout the book?
Gosh, I wrote Munch. I wrote the Reclamation Zone Station shopping plaza. I made up, in a lot of cases in the container buildings, I added specific little stores or law firms or things here or there because I had a couple of lines that I needed to fill those in. I think I added most of the new locations in H4 and H10, H4, and H11 because we didn't think of them as container buildings until I was writing them. Until I was editing them, I realized they really needed to be. But not all of them. For example, I didn't add the community college in I want to say H10. That did come from Graham, who was the writer of that. So, and obviously, I wrote pretty much everything in the Outskirts and everything. And here or there, I added a few locations where there was space or where I felt there was a last minute need, because I realized, we need something. We need an exotic hangout, or we need a few more, at least one or two Netrunner specific shops, that kind of thing.
Awesome. Are those like two maybe different questions? Probably. I'm just gonna say, okay, so NorCal military base as a setting for a game or a one-shot or a campaign is just so absolutely incredible for my brain, because you can do both street level missions, but also as a base point for like outside missions, for like Merc level missions from Solo Fortune 2045. You can start on the base, but you can also have things that just take place in the base, and I love that you can do both and change it up as needed in this one location. Plot points are like, you could root out the culprit ring if you wanted to, like a mystery thing. If you're more combat focused, take out the fighter pilots and go fight things somewhere else. Find the NCS. I can't read NCS, by the way, without seeing Night City Sofa, because that is the abbreviation of the show. And every time I read that, I was like, no, Jess, that's not what it means.
So NCS in this case means Northern Californian Ship.
Yep. But finding the NCS Alaska and its missing crew, or what happened to them, are all great plot
That would be
points
cool.
That, are written in there for a GM to just use.
And you're right, you can do a Merc level campaign. There is no reason why the Estella Bay Calc cannot be essentially hiring out units to mercenary campaigns across the world, A, to get them extra combat experience, but B, to bring in some extra income. Because you know what? The military base ain't cheap to run.
Yeah. And Militech's got their ACPA, so if you want to be in the Militech-y portion of the base,
go there. Or, the COG has their own ACPAs. They just have to be Militech made. But yes, you can go grab those, have fun, do cool exercises. A lot of fun. You're right. There's a lot of cool. That is a great place to do Merc level work.
Yeah. And
to do some cool, and then interspace it with some cool street level on base jobs.
Yeah.
Just do NCIS, solving crimes.
Exactly. Now, while some roles in my brain are very easy to bring into that type of setting, like Solo, Lawman, Medtech, Tech Fixer, Netrunner, all of those are very easy to slot in. What would be some ideas you'd have for like media exec, rocker boy, nomad? If people were like, I want to play one of these roles that's on this base. I guess nomad would be easier. Never mind. Forget I said nomad.
No, Nomad would probably need some reskin. You would be basically assigned to one of the motor pools.
Yeah.
Stuff to get vehicles. And exec, you would be an officer of some kind, most likely. Media, the base might have a paper. A lot of bases have their own papers. On radio station, on TV station. When you create a closed-off ecosystem, you're going to need entertainment. And so media might be useful for that. Maybe as a rocker boy, you are... you can do a cool Elvis thing. Elvis enlisted
Or
in the
Bob
army.
Hope.
Or Bob Hope. I was thinking Elvis specifically actually enlisted in the army, or maybe you are a rocker boy who's a writer. There's a lot of writers, for example, and comic artists who served during World War II. Someone is writing their propaganda. Someone is drawing their art. I used to a friend I had down in North Carolina when I lived there. When he was in the military, he was a military artist. His job was to design essentially all the cool graphics that went on military stuff. I think it would be cool if the NorCal, the Strawberry Cog still had at least one battlefield artist on staff. And that would be a neat thing to do as a media or a rocker boy. Where they're like, oh yeah, if you want to have a gallery out in Night City proper, as long as you make, you report to work every day and you do the jobs we assign you, you do things you do, you can also do art outside of it. So that's all a possibility. The military recruits. This military obviously recruits off base somehow, and it might be using people who do really cool recruitment campaigns. Recruitment is just PR. PR is great for media and rocker boys. So those are all possibilities.
I just had this idea of a media that goes out to do PR like on missions and records and it's like, whatever it is. Yeah. But also has like a 2 a.m. media gossip slot that they do on base for the local hot goss once a week.
Yeah. No. The military more than people realize, it really understand the concept of entertainment and news as controlling both as a way to essentially make things better, or at least more under their control. Troops who are happy are less likely to rebel with the very expensive toys you give them.
Yeah, the training and toys and such. Keep them entertained.
Those are all the questions I had pre-written. I'm trying to think. Who did the artwork for the logos of all the factions? By the way, if you guys didn't know, every faction, has a logo, which is beautiful.
That is a great question. There are many of them. We have multiple artists on that. So logo design was by Alex the Mapmaker, Autumn Haynes, Alonso, Lorenzo Surratt, Ivan Garcia, myself, Joel Chaim Holtzman, John Abis, Katie Dillon, Maria Trigueros, Niels E. Wish, Saga McKenzie, Storn A. Cook, and Winter J. So we had logos in this done by multiple artists. Many of them. Please, by the way, if you like a piece of art or you like the logo, please look up their names in the PDF or the physical book once you have it, and find their galleries and say, drop them a line. Say, I really like this piece of art, because artists love affirmation. They drink it like water, or perhaps vodka.
And
writers and game designers too, guys. Just
that is also true. Writers and game designers also love affirmation. We put our children out in the world in hopes that they will be well received. And while certainly we should not ignore good and constructive criticism, we absolutely love knowing. I'll say this. When I worked customer service, there was, I went through my training, I was told, the customers who are happy hardly ever say anything. And so the customers you hear from are the ones who are unhappy. So when we get to hear from the happy customers, we often see the unhappy customers more often. And so hearing from the happy customers is always a welcome change of pace.
I don't know who did what specific logo, but I will say the Rat Kings logo really tickled me. Because it didn't
I don't know.
Because at first I was like, oh, it's just a star, and I'm like, no, it's made of rats with their tails, and brilliant.
The Rat Kings, which is named after a legendary sewer beast or tunnel beast that is a bunch of rats whose tails are tied together, called the Rat King. It shows up in different places. Most disturbingly, in a cartoon called Hilda on Netflix, which I recommend. Very good, amazingly well done. But point being is that yes, that was a great logo. I can't tell you who did it off the top of my head. I would have to specifically look it up on my computer. Unfortunately, unlike the art pieces, we do label the artist from, but we cannot do that with the logos just because of the unique way in which logos are presented to the world.
For sure.
Makes sense.
But whatever artist that was, I really enjoyed
They
that
did
one.
a great
It was,
job.
like the one that popped out the most at me.
It's a fun one, and for what is a relatively inconsequential game too, which is really cool.
Since we have a little bit of extra time, Jay?
I believe, yeah, I'm good.
Okay. I'm like, I should double check. Did we want to talk about the Outskirts?
I'm happy to talk about the Outskirts if you'd like to.
I know we're not technically deep diving into the Outskirts, but if I wait till like we get there in our list, you're at Origins.
Sorry, can I ask Games? How do you sit so still doing this?
Talent and hard work.
Oh, I'm amazed at your discipline because I'm always good. I cannot sit still.
I'm very used to it. Our episodes when we do our regular ongoing story are can be as much as 5 hours long. So I'm very used to having to be stationary on camera and not pulling attention for hours at a time.
Oh, that's very impressive.
Yeah, I rock, I fidget, I'm bad for it.
Sorry, I got distracted. Yes, let's talk about the Outskirts. The Outskirts are fun.
I was gonna say because I think the week that we're gonna do it is the week of Origins, which people can pick up the physical copy of Night City 2045.
Yes,
if they pre-ordered it.
If you have pre-ordered Night City, and chances are, if you just are there and you want to buy it there, we're not going to not sell it if we have it, which we have. I don't think we'll get so many pickups that we'll have no copies left. Yes, it'll be first physically available at Origins, should all go well, knock on wood. And then shortly after Origins, we will start shipping it to distribution and retailers and people who weren't there. So if you happen to be there and you pre-ordered it, come by to our room. We all have a room. I can't tell you what room number it is right now because I don't know. But come by our room and say, hey, I ordered it. My name is blah, blah, blah. And we will get you your copy. And there will be a process. I do not know what the process is at this point for getting you your book. But you will walk away with it from there.
Awesome.
That's very exciting. Since that's the first you can actually pick up the physical copy, I did not want to just gloss over that. So
yeah,
for those of you who can attend,
yes,
a month away.
I'm
excited.
I'm 99% sure this is true. There is always a 1% chance that the world throws something in our path.
Yes,
but
barring natural disaster and life event.
Yeah,
and life curveball.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
So there's a lot of disparate and variousness to the Outskirts.
There is.
How do you write from that perspective? Because there's a lot more I'm gonna mispronounce the word. It's a lot more homogenous in the other zones. Whereas they're different parts of different zones. But the Outskirts really feels like there's a little bit of everything going on despite itself. What was that writing that?
The answer is you embrace it. You don't try to make it all one thing. And it shows that it is not. It is a collection of locations, which many have nothing to do with each other. And you just they don't. You just write them in Trace's voice, Trace Santiago's voice, and they are that's the joy of it. Where most of the other districts have a theme of some sort or another that kind of tells you what it is and ties it all together. You take advantage of the fact that the Outskirts is just a collection of locations that their only thing they have in common is that they are outside of Night City, but not so far outside of Night City that they're somewhere else.
They're still technically Night City.
Yes. I am going to, by the way, if you guys want to see an Easter egg, I'm going to recommend you look at page 145 on the left side of the PDF, in the left column, in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th, second paragraph from the bottom. Because no one has done. There are I think 4 Easter eggs in this book that no one has found yet, which are very specific.
Sorry, page 145, left side, second to last paragraph.
Left side, second to last paragraph.
Okay. Sorry, carry on.
That's it. But yes, so basically what I did was the Outskirts was literally just a list of locations, and I started with when I made my 2077, everything 2077 to keep in 2045 list, a lot of them were in the outskirts, the spaceport, the mine, the cement factory, the farms, the motel, and the railroad station. Once I put those in, the rest was just a matter of intelligence. It was easy to realize, okay, there needs to be a place where you can practice munitions, and you're not going to be practicing live fire exercises in the city, and the military base and Militech will need it. And so that's it. There needs Lagoon Bend's obviously there. I had to have at least one gas station somewhere on the grid. Well, two station. That sort of thing. And then the marshals and the sheriff will also be offices. Once I had that, it was just, okay, boom, they're all there. And it just made sense. And that was it. I didn't need to, and the landfill and yeah. So basically, it was just a matter of like just what makes sense to be there. And once I was there, it was really surprisingly simple. In fact, I had it 75% written in just the stuff I sent to CDPR on concept for approval to include things like Laguna Bend and the landfill and the pole butt factories.
Nice. So it's easier to walk into it that way.
Yes.
Yeah, there are not a lot of Choo-Choo stations in the city.
There are plenty of Choo-Choo stations in the city. We don't list them in the same way. We don't list oases unless they're particularly. And so I listed 2 outside the city. A, because I had room for them, but B, because once you leave a city, it's an archetype, isn't it? The last gas station on the way out of the city. And I wanted to include that. And when I included a petrochem, I had to include a Sovoy one, because that was a rule of the book, with a few small exceptions. For every petrochem location, there's a Sovoy location, and vice versa.
That makes sense. It's one of the things that's in the Bible.
Yes.
Yep. Did you write, since you focused on the Outskirts and NorCal, did you write them kind of back and forth, or did you write one and then the other? Like, did you stick with one when you started writing it, or did you bounce?
Oh yeah, it was one or the other. Yeah, each took a couple of days to write, and I did the military base first and the Outskirts last. I quite literally tackled my writing section of the book in order: facts section, stitching together the faction section, military base, Outskirts, and then I would have to go back, of course, and put in some facts like the locations and the flash maps were literally the last thing I did in this book.
That makes sense.
Because they required data from all the other sections. But yeah, I went in order and I worked on it. I banged on them until they were done, because it's the way my brain works.
Jolie said the same thing. Yeah, I think I skip. Like, I can work on, I'll either hyper-focus for a bit, and then there's a moment where I'm like, nope, I can't deal with this anymore. It's like, I'll go back to the military base, and then I'll be nope, this is too strict. I'm going to go back to the Outskirts, and let's make a farm.
I can't skip, because if I try to move to something else, my brain will say, you didn't finish the other thing. Go finish the other thing.
That makes sense. I'm kind of with Jess in I have to have multiple projects going on at once for my brain to be able to focus.
Oh, I do, but I can't do and I'm good at like small things, like I can skip, like if I work on something, but they have to be very designated chunks of blocks of time for me. Where it's like, and then at the back of my head, my brain's like still has trouble. Like even now, I'm working on other projects, and it's hard sometimes because my brain is saying, well, Night City 2045 isn't actually out yet, is it? I literally can do nothing. And my brain is still like, until that book is in your hand, you want to think about it all the time. It is a problem I think both Cody and I have in a lot of ways, in that we have to force ourselves to stop fiddling with it at one point, because we get a point where it's we fiddle to the point we're in danger of fiddling to the point where we add errors because our work's no longer checked after a certain point. So you've got to be careful of that.
What about fine-tuning after the fact? Because I believe Jolly said like he got a word count, roughly for what it was. And I know, I'm like sure all your writers, because they're the amazing professionals that they are, know to stick to that word count for very, very numerous reasons. But if it goes like a little over, there's like a little under, how do you choose what may need to be cut or extended?
In some cases, things got cut because they just didn't work, and that was very rare. I think there's actually that was all cut in the rough drafts. The final drafts they were fine, sometimes it's a case of you're going to layout, and sometimes it's like, okay, well, I will write quickly. I will try to get into the voice of the author used, and I'll add a couple of lines, or an adjective. In a lot of cases, literally one word makes a difference and pushes an extra line in. That's all I need. There are some layout tricks you can do too to make things involve kerning and letting make things take up less space or more space. But for the most part, it's and again, once in a while, I was like, oh well, this was a great paragraph, but it's the least informative paragraph in there, so it's got to go. That happened very rarely, but it did happen. But it's just judgment as I am editing and laying out.
Lord Jesus Crust has a question.
Ask the question.
When writing this book, did your family have unique insights on any fields that the book touches on that you leaned on to help better understand that specific material?
Oh, that's an interesting question. The answer is, I want to say yes, but the answer is actually no. For the most part, sometimes I'll talk things over with my wife, and bounce. But for the most part, I would say my wife has a more corporate job than I do. She works for a not-for-profit scientific study firm doing computer engineering, and so just listening to her for the last, and she's had this job, she's worked with them since basically I've known her once she graduated from college, and so listening to her talk about her work for many, many, many years has given me some insight into that corporate level of organization that's helped with my writing. And certainly having kids at various ages, two of them at one now in his early 20s and the other in her late teens, has hopefully given me a bit of insight, not much, but a bit of insight into younger thinking, which has helped as well. But nothing specific in this case where I'm like, oh, well, I need to solve this, blah. It would be if I had something where I felt their expertise was valuable, I would certainly go to them for it. But you learn through osmosis of the people you live with.
You're a much better husband than me. I go to my wife and ask her questions about things, and because she's a child psychologist, she has a very different view on the world. And so I hear her answer, and I'm like, this does not apply at all. Thanks. Love you.
Well, I mean, that will happen. That will happen. And going back to the thing we were talking about earlier, my wife often talks in bizarre language jargons that I do not understand. And they go, yep, okay. It's like, okay. She's like, and then they went down and they did the thing and the VPAC and the blah, 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 blah. And I was like, those are all words, and I recognize emotional tone, so I'm going to say that I'm sorry for your frustration. That must have been very frustrating. I'm sorry you had to endure it, and I'm going to ignore the I'll take the context and not the content in that case. That's fair. She does the same thing for me. I happen to be a gamer, but when I get, and she's a gamer, so she gets it. But when I get into printing terminology and stuff, it's the same kind of thing.
We all have our jargon that we're guilty of.
Yes.
Yes.
Certainly, this is true.
Not a question, but I did like for the outskirts, going back to that section.
Yes.
I did like that you put 3 very unique types of farms in the outskirts. Like, I know normally like they do have a specialty of some sort, but I like that you wrote it out to give people an idea that it's not just like fields and fields and fields of the wheat for Choo-Choo. Like there's this type and this type exists, and so does poppies. I didn't think about poppy farms. It makes a lot of sense. Didn't think about poppy farms.
So in 2077, all those farms exist in one form or another. And so that would just matter. One of the farms you visit and know relatively intimately, so you know there were cows there. And you very specifically know that there are cows there in 2045. One of them was just like a farm. It needed to be a farm. And then there was one that's literally called the Poppy Farm in 2077. I was like, well, what if they actually grew poppies there? And see, poppies have a long history in Cyberpunk because they were wiped out through global plague, bioengineered plagues to combat drug trade. And they decided, hey, let's combat the drug trade by releasing a bioengineered plague on the global population. Surely this plague will not mutate and infect other food stocks, other farm plants.
Always a great
thing. Basically poppies were wiped out, and so it was a fun, like, what if a poppy farm actually grew poppies? And so I went to CPR and said, hey, what if a poppy farm actually grew poppies? And then Biotechnica, that's a cool plot point. And they're like, yeah, sure, that's fine. It's an abandoned farm by 2077, so go for it. Also, it's inspired of the fact that there is a marijuana farm. Before marijuana became relatively legal in New York, there was a marijuana farm run by a university not far from where I live, like 15 minutes from where I live, which was one of the few places where marijuana could be legally grown, or specifically hemp could be legally grown for research purposes. And so I was kind of inspired by that.
That's really cool. Also, Ali in chat says, just saw the toe cutters in the faction section. Yes, I see you, Artel. I love me some Mad Max too.
Yeah, no, I was going there. I was sitting there going, I want a unique. I don't want the Wraiths. The Wraiths are cool, but I want a unique Raffenship faction. What are they gonna be? And I was like, well, I might as well look at Mad Max for some inspiration. And I was just looking through a list of characters from the movies. I said, Airplane Guy, Race Jones, Master Blaster, Toe Cutter. Yeah, that's it, isn't it? And it all came together. It all came together just like that.
Heroic asks, Jolly inserted a lot of characters from his tabletop games that he plays in real life as Easter eggs. Did you do the same sort of thing? And how common is that among writers?
It's relatively common. I'll say that. It is relatively common because a lot of times our table sessions inspire, because why not, right? We take the inspiration we get from that and we bring it into our writing. I do a lot of it for various reasons. That's not entirely true. So first of all, I am a forever GM. But what happens is it's this weird sort of trick when you're in charge, when you are more or less in charge of the canon. Your home games have this tendency to become canon in a weird sort of way where it's like, oh, well, I made up a character who's in charge. I made a character, Robert Spencer, I believe. Robert Parker, in the old combat zone for a character. It was a character I ran, made up on the fly. I ran for a session I ran at TTRPG's headquarters in Boston for a group of people there. And so I was like, oh, well, now I know when it comes time for that particular bar to write that section, that's the name of the character that's there. Because why am I going to make up another character when I've already made up a character who belongs there?
Yeah.
Yep.
You already have one.
Yeah. So that kind of thing tends to happen. I don't tend to write player characters in very often, to be honest. There is a mouse from Danger Gal is named after one of my wife's characters, but is nothing like her, like that character. It's just I like the name and the character, the art existed before the character did, of Mouse in the core rulebook in the Danger Gal ad, and it reminded me attitude-wise, but otherwise the characters are nothing like.
I know Andoli used like people he knew as well, like their personalities.
Yes.
Troy, I want to say, is one of
Yep.
them.
There are a few of them. Beansy over in the Upper Marina was my scoutmaster when I was a kid. My dad, there's a guy in there named Mike Lewis. He is he works on, I believe, he works on Combat Zone as like a set designer. That is named after my father, whose name is Michael Lewis Gray. So there are a couple of characters here and there that are based on people in real life, but for the most part, I enjoy making characters up. So that is never something I've had a lot of issue with making up new people.
Is that?
I have no problem making up the character arc parts of them, but often I can't come up with good names. So
names is names I steal. Names I will steal. I'm not really good. I look around the room and see what's there. It's like, oh, that makes sense. I won't take it. I'm not naming a guy Coffee Mug, but the coffee mug may have a picture on it. The picture may make me think of another thing, and then suddenly they have a name.
I so love the names table in single player mode.
Yes. That is a very amazingly useful table.
Because I'm also very bad with names. By the way, end credits in movies, great place to get names.
Yes.
I know my tragic love affair at the time I was watching Kuroko's basketball anime. So my character's tragic love affair is two names from two different players from that anime. Because I
do a lot of
needed something like that, and I was like, this is what I'm stealing.
Yeah, I do a lot of the one name from one thing, one name from another thing, put them to expression together.
Yep. Heroic says, I guess more of a comment than a question. I really enjoy Phantom Liberty from 2077, and Dogtown is really cool. Interesting. In some ways, aligned with my vision of some districts in Red from before Phantom Liberty came out.
Okay. I mean, I do remember when Phantom Liberty came out, a lot of people were like, oh, finally we have a combat zone that feels like a combat zone. And I love that because the concept of a combat zone as it was in 2020 was a region of lawlessness that's only governed by whoever in that particular region holds strength, but not in a governmental sort of way. It's like, yeah, there's a local gang and the local gang may boss you around, but they're not running things. And in my brain, combat zones in Red are a lot more like Dogtown or like Gaza at certain points, pre-war Gaza, in which the local gang, if you will, may run things and act as a government, as opposed to a lawless zone. They're still horribly dangerous, but like Dogtown's a great thing. Dogtown's a horribly dangerous place, but it is a town, much like actually talking about, not Grace Jones, Tina Turner. I apologize to both Grace Jones and Tina Turner. They are not the same woman and should not be confused with one another. But Bartertown is another good example. Bartertown is a place where you could probably get shanked in the back as you're walking down the street, but there is law in the form of despotic tyranny. And so I see combat zones can be like that. Dogtown did a great job of showing that a combat zone could be both a horribly dangerous place with no government as we understand it, and have a government which is based on essentially strongman gangs. And it's honestly more interesting to me than just endless wastes of violence with no reason.
Yeah. Putting more depth to it.
Yeah.
Games, do you want to ask the next question there?
Oh, I apologize. I was.
No, I can ask.
I'll have you actually ask.
Sure. Lord Jesus Crust would like to know anything Castle Falkenstein related that got slapped in. I know you have a very soft spot for it.
Oh, I do. I have a great soft spot for it, but no, there is nothing in this book that's Castle Falkenstein related specifically.
No Easter eggs, no.
Not in this particular case. Castle Falkenstein. So there's some wonderfully interesting parallels between the Victorian era and cyberpunk in terms of monopolies, mega corporations, lack of government regulation and oversight, and yellow journalism, for example, all things, and incredible technological progress at the cost of human dignity and safety. Those are all things that exist in both settings. But that being said, I like to say that one of the things I had to learn to do in Martell is I had to learn to write like Mike Pondsmith. And there are two versions of Mike Pondsmith that I've learned to write. There is the cyberpunk Mike Pondsmith, and that is, very flippant, very casual, very sharp. And then there is the Falkenstein Mike Pondsmith, which is very formal and Victorian and still clever, but witty as opposed to sharp. And writing in one mode requires me to be in that mode and divorces itself from the other mode. And as a result, it's not something that I think about. I don't think about Falkenstein generally when I'm writing cyberpunk, and vice versa. Because my brain is just literally in a different zone of the world.
As you write, because I believe from AMAs that you've done,
yes,
you've mentioned that you don't listen to music while you write.
I do not. It is distracting.
And I know there's a good many people out there who listen to music to get into a zone or to get into a feel. Is there anything you do pre-writing to get yourself in the right mindset of, I need to be formal witty versus, for example, versus sharp flippant?
Media absorption and is a big part of it. I obviously do not want to consume cyberpunk media 24/7 all my life for the many years and now. That would be terrible. But I regularly dip back into cyberpunk here and there to stay immersed and to keep my brain aligned, if you will, like magnetically aligned with cyberpunk. If I were writing Falkenstein, I would be doing the same. When I wrote Curious Creatures for Falkenstein, I spent a lot of time playing Assassin's Creed Syndicate, which takes place in Victorian England, Victorian London, to get my brain kind of in that mode. And then I was like, I watched the Murdoch mysteries, and, which are great. It was relatively early on. I think there was only like 10 seasons instead of 53 back then. So long story short is immersion helps quite a bit. Reading aloud, not your stuff, but pre-existing stuff. Like if I stop and go back and I reread some 2020 material, it helps me get into a cadence, because when you read something aloud, it has a flow, it has a structure, it has a rhythm. And once you hear it out loud, it's a lot easier to stay in the, grab hold of it and then enter the flow. It's like merging in the traffic and then going with the flow. So that helps a lot too. I wish I could say music is very helpful, but music actually is very distracting for me particularly, because I tend to fall into that rhythm of the music and out of the rhythm of my writing.
No, that's interesting.
Yeah.
No.
Sub-question, how many times have you seen Johnny Mnemonic? I'm joking.
It's not as you would think. Johnny Mnemonic's a great movie. It's a fun movie. I should say it's not a great movie, but it is a fun movie. But I find there is definitely things I have done a lot more of. than Johnny Mnemonic. I have watched Max Headroom many times, for example.
That's awesome.
But I'm now Cyberpunk is large enough now that I'd actually, I am happy to dip into Cyberpunk outside of Cyberpunk, so to speak, the genre. There is plenty of Cyberpunk specific, world specific stuff that to get into that mood I don't need to. I can stop and read the comics from 2077 or one of the many source books, or watch clips of the anime. Just walk around in a video game for a few minutes, and that helps realign my brain to the right frequency.
Fair enough.
I probably should have let the ad roll go off there, but I remember one of the first AMAs that I got to kind of sit and watch you do in the Discord. You mentioned that Cyberpunk for you is a heist game, not a combat game.
Yes.
And it changed my perspective a lot, and one of my favorite TV shows is White Collar. And if you guys have not seen White Collar, who is a con artist who works with an FBI to solve white collar cases, it would be great. I rewatched it, I'm like, man, you could use this as heist. You could use this as Cyberpunk heist. It is not Cyberpunk whatsoever.
No.
But there's a lot of great material in White Collar.
White Collar, Leverage, and Burn Notice were all three very good shows that contain a great deal of inspiration for running or creating Cyberpunk. I cannot recommend those three shows specifically enough to get an idea for how you want to do a game or play your characters, or just come up with ideas for how to run your crew.
Yeah, absolutely.
Heroic had a question, meta question. Given this is a very lore-heavy book, are there different expectations within the company compared to the more mechanic-heavy books?
You approach it differently. For example, in a mechanic-heavy book, James will spend weeks writing mechanics, and like the core rule book, for example. And so you make allowances for that. You schedule for that. In this case, he wrote, Playland by the Sea. It was different, but you don't worry about it. In a lore book, it's a very different thing. In a mechanic book, you have to allow for playtesting, for example. In a lore book, you have to allow for research. They are two different paths. And then the writing is different too, because the mechanic writing is a lot of small bits threaded together bit by bit by bit, and a lore book tends to be flow more. Even though it's a lot of locations, you flow and you plan together. So but expectation-wise, it's less about whether it's a lore mechanic book and whether it's a player-facing book or a GM-facing book. Night City 2045 is a everybody-facing book, a player-facing book, and as a result, then say Hope Reborn, which tends to be a GM-facing book. And as a result, you slot it, you think about it differently in terms of sales, you think about it differently in terms of promotion, you think about it differently in terms of how many copies you order. There's how much art you do, what your budget is. There is a different business sense to it than there is for a data pack or GM screen or a Danger Godus game.
Fair enough.
But yeah, to give you an idea, we very specifically have spreadsheets where we mark off how much time we think each stage of the process would. And design work is different than writing work on that spreadsheet. So we mark time. We mark time off for each, and like Night City had 2 weeks of design time scheduled. Sorry, 3 weeks of design time scheduled. James had 1 week to work on the utility and the security codes, and then we had 2 weeks to go through and put the security codes in and the utility codes in and give all the characters roles and ranks. It didn't take 2 weeks, but we over budget time because that's often done in between other tasks.
random. There were so many comments I had, and I don't know why this one popped into my head as the last one because it's not related to anything you just said.
Okay.
But in terms of running it in Night City for 2045, Jolly mentioned that all the Segatari stations have the bottom line about the servers being in the basement.
Every Elfline's location
That's what
has
it
a little
meant.
note that says that it's rumored that the Elfline servers are so. Very originally, there was a plan to put the Elfline servers in one specific location. I'm not going to say where. And then, as I was doing it, I thought as I was going through and realizing we had multiple Sega. We had the Segatari factory in Old Japantown. We have the Excel one and / Segatari headquarters in Kabuki. We have the Segatari station in Old Japantown. We have the Segatari Discovery Zone in Playland by the Sea, and then so we had all these Segatari locations, and it was just fun to say, hey, because you know what? Of course, they're not going to tell you where the servers are because that's asking to be hacked.
Yeah.
So we put the rumor that that's a lot more fun. That is one of the running. There's a couple of running. That's a big running joke, and then the Silv Oil Petrochem dichotomy is a running joke in the book. But so there are a couple, but that was a fun one. Because I didn't tell James, and then James was doing his beta read. It's like I realized I love the fact that we never say where the Segatari servers are. We leave it up to the GM. We just say every Segatari location could be the Segatari servers.
Yep. I really enjoyed that.
You just have to hit them all. That's all.
Yeah.
That would be that would be a mission.
That would be a fun mission though. It'd be like the super rich Elflines nerd really wants you to like go and cheat for him because he wants access to the next expansion pack early and is willing to spend an obscene amount of money for you to go and find it. The problem is you're not sure where it is. Is it in Playland by the Sea? Is it in Kabuki? You don't know. So that's step one. And step two is actually getting in there. And step three is dealing with the miastasms that are in the servers. So, it's a fun little trip all around.
And that's how you do Merc level missions. Street campaigns.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, no, it's like, that would be a fun Merc level mission.
I also greatly appreciate that in every bit of writing there's enough meat at a location to give plot or it makes it very, very visual of what they're going there, what to expect, but also leaves a lot of room for player and GM interpretation.
We were fortunate in that the original Night City book had laid out the example of exactly the best way to do that, and we just followed that example, and that really, it was there, and there was no need to change how that particular thing was done, and we just say right like that, it worked.
I think you guys have always been great for that in Red, and constantly reminding players it's your table, it's your Night City. Change whatever you want, add whatever you want.
Super appreciate it.
It's
and giving
important.
that room for GMs and players to wiggle.
It is important. It is important that your table and your Night City is different from our Night City, because if your Night City is exactly like our Night City, it's going to be boring for you. Because your Night City, I guarantee, is more fun for you.
I was thinking about our actual play, and I was like, is our Night City more fun? I don't think it is.
Well, you've been playing for a while, so if it wasn't fun, you wouldn't be playing it.
Well, that's because there's a real good mystery, and I'm a sucker for a good mystery that I need to unravel. Speaking of
Sure.
Barry's story,
it is a lot of fun to play.
Best mystery, Barry mystery.
Mm-hmm. Barry will return at some point when Nexi inspiration hits.
Yes. No, it's a great game. Our actual play is a great game, and that Night City is very, very fun. There's a lot going on in that one.
It's very dangerous.
It's very dangerous, very deadly.
It should be.
Yep. I think I'm out of questions. I mean,
Yeah.
probably.
Well,
I think.
we've just about hit the time you scheduled me for too, so that's pretty good.
I have moments.
Yeah.
And it looks like chat is good with their questions.
Excellent.
LCC like that. The Elfline servers are actually in the hot zone.
That would be funky. That's what Dark Zone 1 is. So the mysterious black hole from which no one ever returns.
Yes. Yeah, I think with that, we will conclude this week's episode of Night City Sofa. Thank you all so much for joining us. Jay, thank you so much for chatting with us. It's always such a delight to have you on the show.
It was a pleasure to sit and talk with you both.
Night City Sofa will return next week as we continue to talk Night City 2045. We're going to move to Mainside with guest Linda Evans, who wrote Charter Hill. She also co-wrote The Upper Marina. If you have any questions for Linda, this is going to be a pre-recorded episode. So if you have any questions for Linda, there will be a post in YouTube tomorrow. Ask
the
them.
first question. The first question is to ask is to ask her to pronounce the district manager's name.
Okay. I will ask. The very first question I ask. But yes, if you guys have any questions for Linda, please do post those on the YouTube channel post. I'll make sure that is up tomorrow because it will be a pre-recorded episode. Otherwise, I mean, you can find us over on Saves vs. Death, playing Cyberpunk RED actual play. Generally on Saturdays. I don't think it's actually happening tomorrow because Blank can't be there, but some Saturdays you can find us over there. Otherwise, you can catch up with Edgerunners HQ on Patreon, Blue Sky, YouTube, Twitch. Yes. There we go. Thank you all so much for being here. And until next time, meow for now.
Bye all.